Hey, it's Johara. Welcome back to my channel, To The Witchy Reader. So I'm going to be talking about the best books of 2023. So these are my favorite books that I read throughout the year. I didn't read as much as I wanted to, and a lot of what I did read are rereads. So I decided I'm not going to count rereads, because obviously some that might be some of my favorite books ever. But I'm going to do books that I first read last year. Um, though most of them were indie reads because I definitely at one point in the year focused on indie reads, which I want to do again this year. Because I have some I want to read that I plan to. So yeah, but there are two non-indie books which I'll start with, and then I'll get into the indie books that I consider my favorites of 2023. So one book which is actually a very recent read. It was my not the last book I read in 2023, but the book before that, called Chalice of the Gods, one of Rick Warren's newest books, and I'm very excited for it. I was very excited for it, and I loved it. Basically, Percy being one of the forbidden gods, or forbidden demigods, um, can't exactly just go into the Roman college he wants to with Annabeth. He has to get 3 letters of recommendations by gods, and to do that he has to do quests for each god for them to give him a letter of recommendation. So this book is about him trying to get the this chalice that one of the gods lost that he needs, um, or it was stolen. So Percy, along with Annabeth and Grover, had to go try to figure out who stole it and get it back, um, before the deadline. And then he got his letter of recommendation, and now he has 2 more quests and 2 more letter of recommendations to get, and all before he graduates, so that him and Annabeth, or before the college deadline, so that he can try to get in. Um, so it was. I definitely love seeing the 3 of them again because haven't seen just the 3 of them in so long, and I love their trio and their dynamic. Um, so I was so happy about that. Um, and I absolutely loved it. It was so good. It had me cracking up in a few scenes because Percy's funny. Um, and I absolutely love Percy and Grover's friendship and Percy and Annabeth's romance. And I love Annabeth and Grover's friendship too. It's very underrated. And then I also love the trio, and I loved getting, because the other books were different. Like the original was mostly during summer, because they were at Camp Half-Blood. They're not at Camp Half-Blood because it's during the school year. And then the Heroes of Olympus, I think it was during the school year, but it wasn't during like school time or whatever, or what, they weren't out of school because they were traveling around the world trying to, save the world. Um, but here, uh, they stayed at New York while doing everything, so everything they did to try to get the chalice had to be when Percy didn't have to go to school. Um, which was interesting. So we got to see Percy in school a little bit because we never really got to see much of him in school except for here and there. Um, and yeah, so um, we got to see them at the heart of New York, and we got to see them being funny and trying to trying to get the chalice and trying to save each other. And I just really enjoyed it. I loved it. It was a great read to end the year, or near the end of the year. And like I said, I love seeing it just being 3 of them again. Obviously, we saw Percy's mom and stepdad, but the ending was so funny. Um, with Percy, everyone was teasing Percy, and it was just hilarious. Like I said, I love their dynamic, but yeah, all in all, 5 out of 5. I absolutely loved it. Cannot wait for the second book because it looks like there's going to be 3. Um, one book for each trial, so that's going to be fun. Um, But the other non-indie book is Bamboo Kingdom by Aaron Hunter, who is my favorite author of Secrets, which everyone knows is my favorite series. Well, tied for my favorite series with Harry Potter. I love them both about even. Um, but and I'm also trying to finally finish Warriors this year. I also want to read Survivors and Brave Lands, which are all of Aaron Hunter's books. And this is Aaron Hunter's newest series. Um, the book one is called Creatures of the Flood. I think books 2 and 3 are out. I'm not sure if book 4 is out yet, but I want to buy them. I have a Barnes Noble gift card I got for Christmas, which I want to go to Barnes Noble and try to find those books. I want those books. Um, so yeah. Because I want to continue the series because I love Aaron Hunter's writing and I just love Aaron Hunter. But I love uh the way they write these things, especially since they're dealing with animals, and I love how they can manage to truly get into their characters and um like make it seem like you're actually reading from, bear or cat or dog's perspective, and how they truly make it seem like it's just hard to explain, but I absolutely love it. And this one has to do with pandas, and I love pandas. I mean, Secrets is about bears, obviously, which is what originally drew me in, but not the reason why I love it as much as I do. But pandas are my favorite bears. And I was very excited to try and read this. I got it for my birthday last year. Not last year, because my birthday last year was in December. The year before that, um, I got it. Uh, a friend of mine, an online friend of mine, sent me some money, and I was able to buy the first book. And I loved it. It was just so good, and I loved meeting these new characters and starting this new storyline. Um, it kind of reminds me of Secrets in some way, which no wonder it ends up being my favorite because in Secrets it started off with 3 individual characters, and then a fourth one is introduced, and they all start off away from each other. You get to see their lives, how their lives were, and how they ended up on the journey they did. That where they all end up finally meeting, and then their friendship um, was so powerful. It won against everything, even when other people were like, you shouldn't be friends with other kinds of bears because, white, brown, and black, but they didn't care. They did not care, and their friendship always won over everything. And it looks like this could be going in a similar direction because it started off with 3 characters, and they're all very different characters, and they all are from very different worlds, and they're all starting to go on different journeys to meet, which you can already see is happening. So I'm very excited for book 2 whenever I can get it. Um, and my favorite character is probably Leaf. I absolutely loved reading her. She was such a sweetheart, and I cannot wait for more from the series and just the author in general, because like I said, I want to read so much more of the author's books this year, which I've been meaning to do. It's just life. But yeah, so um as you guys know, I'm not big into poetry at all. But I did read 3 poetries last year, all by a friend of mine, the same friend that sent me the money where I bought the first book in Bamboo Kingdom. And um, she wrote 3 poetry books, so I read them all. And I enjoyed them all. I rated them all 5 stars. They were all really good. I'm not into poetry really, but I read them because they're hers and they were good. They were good. And I put one of my favorites of 2023 is Myth and Magic. Um, it's about magical creatures, poetry about a bunch of different mythical and magical creatures, and obviously someone who loves myth and magic obviously ended up loving this because it was really interesting, especially because I felt like she got into the POVs of these characters, like, and she made, and what I loved is like there were some that are seen as evil or scary, but they're really not. And they have like their stories a lot sadder than people realize. She really delved into that. You could tell she did her research to understand these characters and these creatures, and it was actually really good. Um, and then one of my earliest reads of the year, A Game of Wits: The Exiled, um, by Rebecca and Nemu. I may be saying this wrong. Smith. I might be saying that wrong too. Sorry if I pronounce your names wrong. But the author of Myth and Magic's Lucy D. Rose. I almost forgot to say. But yeah, again, was the Exile's third book in A Daughter's Ransom. This is the second indie book series I ever started. The first one being the Shadow Realm Chronicles. Um, and I read the first two books before this year, obviously, and this is the third book. And they have other books published. I think they have books 4 and 5 published now, plus a prequel published, which I want to be able to buy and read once I have the money. But I absolutely love the third book because you get to see Asha and Luca again. They just escaped after the events of book 1, and you can and I absolutely love their friendship, and you can see how much they care about each other, how much they trust each other and only each other, because they're not entirely sure who they trust right now. Like, they're not sure who they can trust, but they know they can trust each other. And seeing how much they care for each other, how much Luca would do anything to make sure Asha is okay, and Asha will do anything to make sure Luca is okay. I absolutely love their dynamic and their friendship. And I think I mentioned this in a previous video where I talked about the two of them and this book and this series, but I absolutely love the friendship. So because a lot of people will be like, oh, they're so close, they should be together. I'm not one of those people because I love a good friendship. So I love the friendship, and I'll be okay if they stay friends and never become anything more. But at the same time, I can definitely see them becoming more. So I'll also, I'm not sure if they are heading in the slow burn romance direction, but if they are, I wouldn't complain because I think they would definitely be very, very cute together. So either way, I love their friendship, but I would also love them if they became romantic. So if they stay friends, great. If they become something more, great. But I love their characters individually and their relationship. Um, uh, as The Warriors of Bria by T.M. Cole. She, I haven't really done any of my reading or writing sprints lately, but she was one of them that would always do them with me. But she, or the book, there's 4 books out so far. The 5th and final book will be out. I have no idea when it's coming out. I don't even think she knows yet. But I've read the first 4 books in the series, and they were so good. Absolutely love the characters. Um, Lauren and Val are the main characters. And in the first book, it was only their POV, but each book started to add POVs. Like Val's brother Baden got a POV, so did their sister Valora. Um, it was really interesting because in the beginning, Lauren ends up in Val's world by mistake, and they don't even speak the same language. Um, but her mother died, but then her father, who she thought was dead, ends up having been in this world for a while, and so he speaks both languages at this point, obviously, so he's able to teach her this language to help her speak to Val better, and other characters, and so if you're a fan of Avatar: The Last Airbender, check this out because there's definitely there's these warriors and they all have different elements, and Lauren is kind of like the Avatar in this world, um, because she's a night warrior, which is different than all the other ones, um, she's not the only night warrior. There are other night warriors, but they are also very rare, so it's kind of like being the Avatar. And there's one character, I can't remember her name now. It's been a little bit since I read this book, several months. I think I read this book around June. But the person that was training Lauren and Val, she reminded me so much of Toph. I'm not kidding. Like, just the way she trained them and stuff. And there was one line she said, I don't remember what it is now, but there was one line she said where I was like, oh my gosh, she gives me so much really Toph vibes. So yeah, definitely check out this series if you like Avatar: The Last Airbender, because it was definitely. But yeah. So, and I also really like Lauren and Val's relationship. Um, and they kind of have this whole forbidden thing about them because Val's royalty, which apparently happens a lot. uh, but yeah. Um, so they have to try to obviously save their world, and they have to get Lauren trained so that because she may be the key to saving the world. Because I love a good save the world story apparently. But yeah. Another book is the ritual. The Ritual of the Court trilogy. Only books 1 and 2 are out so far. It's by Katarina King, and um, I absolutely love them. So basically, Scarlet is forced uh, to go to a town with her relatives that she despises, who are very, very religious and very, very culty. This town is a cult. I will say it again and again. This town is a cult. And a discussion. Cult. But, and, uh, she's a witch, so obviously nobody likes her. But she manages to befriend the one outcast who is outcasted because he's gay, Eli, and I love him, and I love her. There were so many times where I was just cheering her on the time she went off on her uncle or her grandparents or the entire town. Like I was cheering. Or I absolutely also love when Eli went off on his family because they start actually wanting to be in his life again because they all kind of outcast him as well as the town when he came out as gay. And I absolutely love the speech he makes because like it didn't matter that he's gay, like they should have supported him even if they didn't understand him and stuff, which is yes, like 100%. Like I loved his entire speech when he talked about how they should have supported him and trusted him and just loved him despite, or not even despite, just even if they didn't understand him, they should have just loved him anyways and been there for him because he was alone until Scarlet showed up. And yeah, and you find out that Scarlet had been there when she was younger because Eli was friends with her twin brother who has ran away like 5-ish years ago, I want to say. Um, and she hasn't spoken to him since. And you find out that's how Eli and Hunter found out they were gay because they ended up having attraction to each other, and they kind of had a thing back uh, when they were younger. So, um, and the first book follows Scarlet, but the second book follows Hunter after the events that happen at the end of Malediction. Um, book 1 is called Malediction, book 2 is called Castigate. And he follows Hunter, and um, at the end, him and Scarlet reunite. And but yeah, so I did like book 1 more, but I did still love book 2. But Scarlet and Eli are definitely my favorite characters. They both were so fiery, and some of their speeches they made were just so real and so true, and I absolutely loved them for saying what they needed to say. And yeah, so um, and then I also have The Mantis Gland um, by um, by Adam Andrews Johnson, and there's 4 books out. I better read the 4th book because the first 3 books were already out when I started reading the series, and it's horror, which as people on the channel probably who watch me by now probably know that I love horror movies and series and stuff, but I haven't actually read many horror books. But I absolutely loved it. So basically, in here, the there are people called shifts, and they have magical powers, but they are outcasted from having magical powers. They are known to be freak and just they shouldn't exist basically. But they have this mantis gland in their brain, in like the center of their brain, I think, which is how they get their power. So if people want to steal their powers, they can just chop off their heads and eat that glands, so they have to kind of eat some of their brain in order to get their powers. But there's also bioshifts, biological shifts, which are people whose powers ended up transforming the way they looked. Like one of my favorite characters, Lahari. Um, she looks like basically like a lizard. Um, but like I said, there's 4 books. In each book, you meet new characters who end up becoming. Because at first, like in the first book, that you meet the main characters, Agrel, uh, Dozy, and Elia. You meet them first, and they all start off pretty much alone. Um, but then obviously they all meet, and then they meet Mystic and his husband when Elia needs help healing, and um, then you end up meeting their daughter Lahari, who is a bioshift, which I just mentioned her. And I absolutely love Lahari and Agrel's relationship. Okay, so basically, there's not that many people that actually have that he never really mentioned their sexuality, so it's left up to people to guess or to headcanon. Um, and which is something that I actually kind of like. Um, there's obviously people like Mystic and Husband. You can assume they are either gay or bisexual. Their Auntie Peg and Dot are together, but I had canon Dozy as Arrow Ace, and I had canon. I'm not entirely sure what sexuality I had canon Agrel and Lahari as, but all I know is that I shipped them a lot. Like I thought the two of them might be heading somewhere romantic, but obviously other things were in store. But um, so this group ends up forming a family, and each book ends up introducing a couple new characters who become part of this family. And as this war for against shifts and bioshifts happen, there are obviously a group of people who believe that they are not evil and want to protect them. Mystic has been included, considering their daughter is Lahari, who is a bioshift. Plus, they also love a lot of not everyone that's introduced are shifts. Like Dozy's not, or anything, but they do care about. They've become a family, so they do care about these shifts that they've grown attached to become part of their family. As and so there are people that are trying to protect them, and there's also shifts like Lahari and a few other bioshifts who's just had enough of being hunted and hated and feared that they are fighting back now. And so now there's this full blown out war for people who are either shifts or accept shifts, and then people who obviously don't. And yeah, so it's been a lot of fun, a lot of murder, and that's always fun. And then the last book I'm going to be talking about is Be an Impossible Dream by Ellie Lieberman. This might just have been my favorite series. My favorite 2 books I read this year, other than Bamboo Kingdom, because, like I said, I love Aaron Hunter and everything they write. But I absolutely loved these 2 books. B started. The 2 main characters are Henry and Ari, and the 2 of them start after Henry's a prince, but he ran away, and Ari also kind of ran away from her family. Um, and they end up meeting, and Ari, who's ends up taking Henry back to her family and hiding him out. And they join this rebellion that has started to try to overthrow the king, and so lots of fun there. And I absolutely love both characters and their friendship. I once described them as a chaotic and dangerous duo, uh, because they are. But then, in An Impossible Dream, which is a prequel, which you get to see how things got to where they did and be, like why Henry ran away and what exactly happened to make things get as bad as they did to the point where they had to overthrow the king. And so you got to see things in the palace, because before you saw the village life, you saw Ari, who was a peasant, and her family, and this rebellion of people who are from the village. You get to see Henry and Fra, who are princes, but you don't really get to see their life as princess. You get to see their life as villagers because they're in the peasant life right now. But now you get to see palace life and royal life, and it follows Sarah, who is a servant, and um, it's a span of 6 years, this book, and you get to see um, lots of new characters. Um, you get to see how things got to where they did. Like, you see Henry grow up a bit. You get to see how he came from, how he ended up getting to the point where he did, where he had no other choice but to run away. And um, you get to see things, because in the first book you hear about Sarah and the baby, which is Frost's baby. Um, but and no one knew if she was alive or dead, and the baby was alive or dead. So you actually get to see um, what happened to her and how she got to that point as well. And it was really interesting to see how things tied together in B. Um, and yeah, so it was a lot of fun to see that. And I love characters from B. I love characters from An Impossible Dream. I love relationships. Like, my favorite characters I said in B were Henry and Ari. In An Impossible Dream, Sarah, Fra, Elsby, and Henry. Um, And then I love relationships. Obviously, I mentioned I love Henry and Ari's relationship. I feel like there was a much bigger cast in Impossible Dream because even though it's in Sarah's POV, you got to see a lot of characters interact with her, and you got to see a lot of these characters and who they are to their core. In B, it was in two people's point of view, Ari and Henry, but for a lot of it, you got to see just Ari and Henry and their relationship, other than you gotta see Ari's family, and then you get to see Fra, and after a while, after he shows up, you gotta see Iacon, who was in since the beginning. But other than that, um, maybe there was sort of a big cast because you had all of Ari's family and stuff, but it still felt like a bigger cast in An Impossible Dream because you're around the palace, and in Impossible Dream, you were pretty much just in Ari's home until they joined the rebellion. Then you got to see other characters. But for like half the book, you were just at Ari's house as they were trying to hide out Henry. So you saw Ari, Henry, Iacon, and then Ari's family until they joined the rebellion. Um, but yeah, but you also get to see that this person that Henry was in B, like, it's always was who he was. Like, he's kind, he's good hearted, and he's willing to sacrifice himself. Which you see, like, at the end of Impossible Dream, he sacrificed himself to make sure Sarah could get away. But then in B, he sacrificed himself too to make sure the king stops his reign for good. And um, and you just gotta and you get to see like how Fra ended up in war because it was not his choice. You gotta see what happened to Sarah and her baby, and you just gotta see how all the loose ends tied together and how they all got to where they got to in B. Um, but yeah, I loved both books. They were phenomenal. I can't speak. Phenomenal. I still can't speak. But I highly recommend all these books I mentioned. Definitely check them out. They were definitely my favorite reads of 2023, and I can't wait to continue these series because I absolutely love them. So thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe and comment what your favorite reads of 2023 were, and I'll talk to you guys next time.